Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are getting into something that, well, it really has the potential to just completely change your life.
Oh, absolutely. It's a topic that affects literally every single one of us.
Yeah, it does. And to start off, I want you, the listener, to just imagine something for a second. Try to picture this. You're sitting in your parked car, right? And you're just gripping the steering wheel.
We've all been there.
Right. You're about to walk into this massive interview, or maybe you're pitching a new client, or I don't know, finally having that really difficult conversation you've been avoiding for months.
The dreaded conversation.
Exactly. And your palms are sweating, your heart is just hammering against your ribs, your breathing gets all shallow, and your brain is basically flashing this giant neon sign that just says, "Abort. We are in danger. Run away."
Run for your life.
Yeah.
And the fascinating, or really the incredibly frustrating thing about that exact moment is that, well, there's absolutely zero physical danger, right? There's no predator stalking your car. The building isn't on fire. But your nervous system is, it's reacting as if you are literally about to step into a gladiatorial arena.
Which is completely wild when you actually pause to analyze it. Like, why does human nature so quickly construct this psychological prison of panic and doubt? We just completely ignore the objective reality that we're safe. We actually have the resources to handle the situation, you know?
Well, it's because we're dealing with evolutionary hardware that is profoundly out of date. I mean, the amygdala.
The fear center.
Yeah, exactly. The part of your brain responsible for processing fear. It didn't evolve to optimize for your highest potential or, your career success. It evolved strictly to keep you alive in a very dangerous ancestral environment.
So it's just trying to protect us.
Exactly. To the primitive brain, the unknown literally equated to death. So your brain creates this mental prison of doubt as a highly misguided defense mechanism. It's essentially saying, hey, if you stay in the cave, you don't get eaten. If you never try the new thing, you never fail, and you don't get cast out of the tribe.
Right, and being cast out of the tribe historically meant starving to death. So that brings us perfectly to the core of today's deep dive. We're looking at a source text today called L'éveil du potentiel, le pouvoir de la confiance, which translates to awakening potential. The power of confidence.
It's a fantastic read.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to completely dismantle that outdated defense mechanism for you. We're going to look at the actual mechanics of self-belief, not as some fluffy motivational concept, but as a psychological framework that you can aggressively hack.
Yeah, and the central thesis of this material is pretty stark. It argues that most people are absolutely not bottlenecked by a lack of talent or money, or even a lack of opportunity.
Right, it's internal.
Yeah. It's entirely internal. They are bottlenecked by that primitive internal voice just whispering, I'm not good enough, or, what if I completely fail? And over time, those passing protective thoughts, they just calcify into a permanent, unyielding reality.
So today is all about breaking that exact mindset. We really want to prove that everything starts in the mind. Before success can ever materialize in the physical world, it has to be normalized in your head. But to break out of that evolutionary cave, we have to talk about the first step, which brings us to a massive, fundamental misunderstanding about how confidence actually works.
Oh, this is so important. There is this pervasive cultural illusion that confidence is a prerequisite for action.
Like you have to have it before you do anything.
Exactly. People intuitively think, well, once I finally feel confident enough, then I'll launch the business. Or once I feel secure, then I'll set that boundary. They treat confidence like a train, and they're just sitting on the platform waiting for it to arrive before they can start their journey.
Right. But I actually want to push back on that a little bit, or at least challenge the premise. Because there is a whole branch of psychology, like Amy Cuddy's famous work on embodied cognition, that suggests you actually can trick your brain into feeling confident before you act.
The whole fake it till you make it movement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, if I can do a power pose, alter my breathing, physically change my state to feel confident before I step on stage, doesn't that prove I'm generating confidence prior to the action?
That is a brilliant distinction, actually.
Yeah.
But we have to separate state management from trait confidence.
Okay, state versus trait.
Right. What you're describing, power posing, deep breathing, that's managing your acute physiological state. It lowers cortisol and spikes testosterone temporarily. So, your voice doesn't shake.
Right.
But faking it till you make it is fundamentally about masking your internal terror so other people buy into your competence. It does not cure the underlying fear. What the text is advocating for isn't masking. It's an empirical data-gathering mission.
Okay, wait, clarify that. What does a a data gathering mission look like in this context?
Think of fear not as a weakness, but as an informational deficit.
An informational deficit.
Yes. Your brain is looking at a new situation, say starting a new company, and it scans its internal archives. It finds zero historical data proving that you can survive this specific scenario.
Because you've never done it before.
Exactly. Because the data is missing, it outputs the emotion of fear to halt you. So the only way to permanently eliminate that fear is to provide the missing data.
Oh, wow. So fear is literally just a lack of empirical evidence that you won't die doing the thing.
Precisely. And the only way to get that evidence is to take the action while you are still terrified. You have to do the thing, survive the thing, and then your nervous system records that outcome. Oh, I gave the presentation and I did not die.
Wow.
That new data overwrites the old fear. True confidence isn't some mystical aura you're born with.
Yeah.
It's an earned historical record of your own survival. Action must precede confidence because action is the only thing that generates the data.
That completely reframes the entire concept. You aren't lacking confidence, you're just lacking data. You basically have this empty spreadsheet, and you have to go out into the world and populate it with rows of survival data.
I love that analogy. Populate the spreadsheet.
Right. But let's say you decide to do exactly that. You commit to gathering the data. You take that first terrifying step. What usually derails us right in the middle of the attempt, it's rarely the outside world.
And most never.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle, hands down, is the voice inside your own head.
And that internal critic is incredibly persuasive because it uses your own intimate history against you.
It knows all your weak spots.
Exactly. It operates by pulling up a highly curated highlight reel of your past failures. It compares your awkward, messy beginnings to other people's highly edited, polished middles. And it just constantly pushes the narrative that you are too late, too old, or just, fundamentally incapable.
It is literally like a highly biased social media algorithm inside your brain. You know when you accidentally click on one negative news story or one video of a horrible accident, and suddenly your entire feed is just a relentless doom scroll of terrible things happening?
Oh yeah, you can't escape it.
Our inner limiting voice acts exactly like that algorithm. It feeds you a hyper-personalized timeline of your worst moments, your embarrassments, your deepest insecurities. It's optimizing for maximum engagement by making you feel terrible.
That is the perfect analogy. Because an algorithm doesn't care about the objective truth, right? It only cares about keeping you hooked. And the material poses a really radical question for the reader. What if those thoughts are simply lies?
Just flat out lies.
Yeah. We have this very dangerous psychological tendency to believe everything we think, simply because we are the ones thinking it. We assume that because the thought originated in our own brain, it must be an objective fact.
Which is a terrifying realization, honestly. We just blindly trust the doom scroll.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
And the text argues that most people never discover their true potential simply because they believe the algorithm. They accept the internal lies as facts, and they quit before they even really begin. This is why you have to actively apply critical thinking to your own internal monologue. You have to aggressively interrogate those thoughts.
But practically speaking, how do we do that? I'm thinking about you, the listener, right now, standing at a crossroads. How do you actually differentiate between a legitimate internal warning, like your brain correctly telling you, hey, maybe don't invest your entire life savings in this extremely sketchy crypto scheme, and a lying, limiting voice that is just trying to keep you small?
It's tricky because physiologically they feel the same.
Exactly. They both trigger that exact same feeling of fear.
So the differentiation lies in the core motivation of the voice. You have to ask yourself, what is this fear trying to preserve?
Okay, what is it trying to preserve?
Right. A legitimate, healthy warning is geared toward preserving your physical safety or preventing objective, catastrophic ruin. The lying, limiting voice, on the other hand, is geared entirely toward preserving your ego.
Ego preservation. Okay, unpack the mechanics of that. How does that work?
The inner critic operates on shame and social comparison. Let's go back to evolutionary biology again. In a hunter-gatherer tribe, if you did something foolish and the tribe laughed at you or ostracized you, you would be left alone in the wilderness to die.
Right.
Social rejection meant literal death. So if your internal voice is saying, don't try to pivot to a new career at 40 because your friends will think you're having a midlife crisis and you'll look foolish if it fails, that is ego preservation.
Because looking foolish isn't actually going to kill you?
Exactly. That is a lie. The lie is that looking foolish is fatal. It feels fatal to the primitive brain, but in the modern world, it's completely harmless. You have to recognize that you are far more capable than that outdated, ego-preserving voice wants you to believe.
Okay, so you apply critical thinking, you silence the doom-scrolling algorithm in your head. You realize looking foolish won't actually kill you. You push forward to gather that survival data, and then inevitably you hit a wall.
It's got to happen.
Right? You fail, you don't get the client, the project tanks, the relationship ends. We have to fundamentally redefine how we process those walls because our default setting is to view failure as the ultimate proof that the inner critic was right all along.
Yes. Our default intuition is to view failure as a permanent red light. The brain interprets the psychological pain of failure as a signal to permanently stop. But the source material is adamant that failure is an essential, non-negotiable mechanism for growth.
You can't skip it.
No, you can't. Every single successful person failed multiple times. It's not an anomaly you're supposed to avoid. It is the required curriculum.
The curriculum of failure, I really like that phrase. The text specifically points out that failure is the only reliable way to learn 3 distinct things: discipline, resilience, and wisdom. And it concludes that the people who succeed aren't the ones who possess some magical immunity to failure. They are simply the people who refuse to stop.
Let's actually deconstruct the mechanics of those 3 traits.
Yeah.
Because you literally cannot acquire them in a vacuum of success.
Right, you can't learn them when things are going well.
Exactly. Take discipline. Discipline isn't waking up excited to work. Discipline is the ability to execute when the initial enthusiasm has completely evaporated, which usually happens the day after a massive, embarrassing failure.
Oh, absolutely. Motivation gets you to the starting line, but discipline keeps you running when it's pouring rain and your shoes are untied.
That's spot on. Then there's resilience. Resilience is the physical and mental elasticity to bounce back to your original shape. Now, by definition, a material cannot demonstrate elasticity unless it is first stretched and put under extreme tension.
Oh, that's a great point.
You only develop neurological resilience by being knocked down and forcing your nervous system to adapt to the impact. And finally, wisdom. Wisdom is the deep, granular understanding of what does not work.
You have to experience it firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, you can read 100 books on business strategy, but you cannot theoretically learn the wisdom of a failed product launch. That wisdom has to be painstakingly extracted from the wreckage of your own attempt.
I follow the logic perfectly, but I have to inject a dose of reality here.
Please do.
Because it is so easy for us to sit behind these microphones and say, oh, embrace the wreckage, extract the wisdom. But in the trenches, when you have just failed publicly, like say you spend a year building an app, you launch it, and you get absolutely 0 downloads, it burns.
Oh, it's brutal.
It brings up intense shame, deep frustration, and a very real biological urge to just hide. Isn't it completely natural that our brains interpret that intense psychological pain as a hard stop sign? How do we actually hack that immediate emotional reflex so we don't just throw in the towel?
It is 100% natural. The brain's immediate reflex to pain, whether you touch a hot stove or experience a humiliating public failure, is rapid withdrawal. To hack that reflex, you have to surgically sever the link between the event and your identity.
Separate the data from the identity.
Yes, the pain you feel in the moment is real, and it is physiologically valid. But the interpretation that follows the pain, the thought that says, I failed, therefore I am fundamentally a failure, that is a cognitive choice.
Wow.
You hack the reflex by acknowledging the biological reality first. You say, yes, that hurt, that was embarrassing, my ego is severely bruised. But then you force a cognitive pivot into data extraction mode.
How do you do that pivot?
You ask yourself, which part of the curriculum am I in right now? Is this a lesson in discipline, resilience, or wisdom? You transform the red light into a classroom. You treat the failure as an experiment that simply yielded unexpected data.
That is an incredibly practical shift. You stop taking it personally and you start treating it academically. Surviving that failure and extracting the data gets us back on our feet. But here is the critical part. Maintaining the drive to keep moving forward day after day requires a sustainable system.
Yes, it's an ongoing process.
You don't just figure this out on a random Tuesday, extract some data, and then you're suddenly cured of self-doubt for life.
Far from it. And this is where the material introduces the absolute necessity of daily maintenance. There is a profound danger in treating self-belief as a one-time epiphany. Motivation, as we discussed, is just a neurochemical spike. It's a fleeting feeling. Believing yourself, however, is a daily, deliberate decision.
And the material handles this reality with a lot of grace, I think. It openly acknowledges that you're going to have days where you feel absolutely unstoppable, and you're going to have days where you wake up feeling completely lost, overwhelmed, and entirely unqualified for your own life.
Which is perfectly normal.
Exactly. And the solution to that inevitable fluctuation isn't to frantically chase the feeling of being powerful. The solution is rigorous daily repetition.
The text outlines a specific psychological protocol for this. It suggests waking up every single morning and consciously reinforcing 4 core truths before the outside world has a chance to dictate your mood.
Okay, what are the 4 truths?
They're simple but profound. 1, I am capable. 2, I can grow. 3, I can learn. 4, I can change my life.
Now, in self-help circles, we constantly hear analogies comparing self-belief to a battery. Like your willpower battery drains throughout the day, so you have to recharge it. But based on what we've been discussing about data and learning, that metaphor feels incredibly shallow.
It is shallow.
Right. A battery just holds a charge. It degrades over time. It doesn't get stronger. So what is actually happening in the physical brain when we repeat these 4 truths every single day?
You're entirely right. The battery metaphor is deeply flawed. A much more accurate mechanical way to look at this is through the lens of neuroplasticity, specifically a biological process called myelination.
Myelination. Okay, explain that.
When you think a thought, a specific neural pathway fires in your brain. If you repeat that thought like, I am capable, your brain recognizes that this pathway is being used frequently. To make it more efficient, the brain physically wraps those neurons in a fatty insulating substance called myelin.
So it literally insulates the wiring to make the signal travel faster.
Exactly. Myelin acts just like the insulation on a copper electrical wire. It makes the signal travel faster, stronger, and with less energy. At first, when you're consumed by doubt, trying to believe in yourself is like hacking your way through a dense, overgrown jungle with a machete.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. It's slow, and it requires intense, deliberate focus. But as you repeat those 4 truths daily, you are laying down myelin. That jungle path becomes a dirt trail, then a paved road, and eventually a high-speed superhighway.
So the positive belief actually becomes the path of least resistance. It becomes the default.
Yes. It physically alters the architecture of how your brain processes reality over the long term.
That's incredible. But let me ask you this, because we are all human. What happens on the days we inevitably forget?
Right.
You oversleep, the dog throws up on the rug, you rush out the door, and you completely fail to reinforce those truths. If you skip a day, does the jungle instantly grow back? Do we lose all the progress we've painstakingly built?
Not at all. That is the beauty of myelination. You don't lose the physical infrastructure you've built just because you missed 1 day of maintenance. The superhighway is still there.
That's a relief.
Yeah. The danger isn't missing a single day. The danger is letting 1 missed day turn into a missed week or a missed month. If you abandon the highway long enough, the brain stops maintaining it, and the old, highly myelinated pathways of the inner critic, the fear, the doubt, they will naturally take over again because they're still there, waiting to be used. Consistency is far more important than intensity.
That brings all of these complex threads together perfectly. I mean, we are talking about overriding ancient evolutionary reflexes, gathering survival data through action rather than waiting for a feeling, interrogating the biased algorithms of our ego, extracting wisdom from the wreckage of failure, and physically rewiring our brains through daily myelination. So when you zoom out and look at all of this collectively, what is the ultimate conclusion we can draw from this deep dive?
When you strip away all the layers, the foundational truth of this text is a message of radical, unflinching self-reliance. It delivers a very blunt, very sobering reality check. Nobody is coming to save you.
Wow.
Your future is not dependent on the economy or your boss or waiting for some lucky break. It entirely depends on the choices you make today and the thoughts you choose to myelinate tomorrow morning.
Nobody's coming to save you. I can imagine that sounding incredibly harsh, almost bleak to someone hearing it for the first time, but when you really chew on it, it might be the most liberating sentence in the world.
It really is.
If nobody's coming to save you, it means you don't have to wait for permission anymore. You don't have to wait to be discovered or picked by someone else. You hold the keys to the entire engine.
It completely destroys all external excuses. The moment you internalize that radical responsibility and truly trust your own biological capacity to learn and adapt, your behavior fundamentally changes.
You take your power back.
Exactly. You stop playing it safe, you take larger calculated risks, you tolerate the discomfort of the unknown, and you just refuse to settle for the mental prison of doubt.
Which is exactly what we want for you, the listener. If you take away anything from today's deep dive, Let it be this. You are infinitely more powerful than your fear. It does not matter where you are starting from right now.
Not at all.
It does not matter how many times that internal doom-scrolling algorithm has fed you a highlight reel of your worst mistakes. You have the ability to physically rebuild the infrastructure of your mind.
The entire process is a shift from passive observation of your life to active, deliberate creation. The doubt is an evolutionary relic. It will always be there sitting in the passenger seat, but it absolutely does not get to drive the car.
And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. We started this conversation talking about the invisible ceiling we build over our own heads, a prison constructed entirely out of misplaced survival instincts. But if you are truly the only one who can save yourself, and if taking action is the only scientifically valid way to gather the data that builds confidence, what is the absolute smallest, most immediate action you can take right now, today? What is one tiny thing you can do to prove your inner critic wrong and gather a fresh piece of survival data?
Just one thing.
Exactly. What happens to your life if you stop treating your self-doubt as a final verdict and start treating it as a dare?